Hello and welcome back to the channel. We return today to the Perpetual calendar because the Perpetual calendar deserves to be returned to. No other complication in watchmaking rewards repeated study quite as richly, reveals new depths of appreciation quite as consistently, or spans the full hierarchy of horology quite as dramatically, from the first gateway manufacturers producing it with genuine craft at attainable prices, to the summit occupied by a single watchmaker whose name is synonymous with the very invention of mechanical genius itself. Today's list focuses exclusively on the haute horlogerie tier of Perpetual calendar watchmaking. 10 manufacturers, 10 philosophies, 10 answers to the same fundamental question of how a mechanical object smaller than a closed fist should track the irreducible complexity of the Gregorian calendar for a lifetime without asking anything of its owner in return. The watches at the top of this list are among the most accomplished mechanical objects human civilization has produced. Let us give them the attention they have earned. Let's count them down. Number 10. Frederique Constant Slimline. Perpetual calendar, the Perpetual calendar that made the complication newly accessible to serious collectors who had previously considered it financially out of reach. The Frederique Constant Slimline Perpetual calendar. What Frederique Constant achieved with this reference was genuinely significant. A manufacture perpetual calendar movement, developed and produced in Geneva, housed within a case of exceptional thinness and dressed with a dial of elegant, considered restraint, all at a price point that placed it, for the first time, within reach of buyers operating below the traditional haute horlogerie threshold. The Slimline Perpetual calendar presents its information, day, date, month, leap year, and moon phase, through a dial composition of deliberate minimalism, allowing each element breathing room rather than competing for visual priority. The slim case profile, enabled by the comparatively thin Perpetual calendar module, gives the watch a wearing elegance on the wrist that thicker Perpetual calendar cases from more established houses cannot match at any price. For the collector taking their first serious step into manufacture Perpetual calendar watchmaking, the Frederique Constant Slimline is the most intelligent and most rewarding entry point available. The Frederique Constant Slimline Perpetual calendar retails from approximately $4,000–6,500 USDD. Number 9. Mont Blanc Heritage. Perpetual calendar. The Mont Blanc Heritage. Perpetual calendar is the reference that consistently surprises those who encounter it without prior expectation. A watch whose movement quality, dial finishing, and complication execution deliver a level of horological seriousness that the Mont Blanc name, still most widely associated with writing instruments, does not automatically lead the uninformed buyer to anticipate. Mont Blanc's watchmaking operations, anchored in Villeret through the historic Minerva manufacture, whose movement archives and technical heritage stretch back to 1858, provide the Heritage Perpetual calendar with a caliber lineage of genuine depth. The Heritage case draws its visual identity from the great dress watches of the mid-20th century. A softly cushion-inflected round case, polished and brushed surfaces handled with care, and a dial whose decorative choices, guilloche texturing, applied indices of fine proportion, reference the golden era of Swiss independent watchmaking without tipping into pastiche. The Perpetual calendar information is presented with clarity and visual hierarchy, ensuring that a watch of this complication density remains immediately legible at a glance, rather than requiring studied contemplation to read. The Montblanc Heritage. Perpetual calendar retails from approximately $8,000–$13,000 USD. Number 8. Zenith Elite Perpetual calendar. The Zenith Elite Perpetual calendar arrives on this list carrying one of the most important and least adequately celebrated stories in the entire history of Swiss watchmaking. The story of a manufacturer that was ordered to destroy everything it had built and refused. In 1974, as the quartz crisis tightened its grip on the Swiss industry, Zenith's management instructed its watchmakers to dismantle the tools, documentation, and calibers of the mechanical era in preparation for an all-quartz future. One watchmaker, Charles Vermeau, hid the tooling and blueprints for the El Primero caliber in the attic of the local manufacturer, behind a false wall where they remained concealed until 1984, when demand for a high-frequency mechanical chronograph caliber brought buyers to Zenith's door, and the hidden archive made it possible to answer. That act of preservation, quiet, individual, and completely unauthorized, saved one of the great Swiss calibers and confirmed that Zenith's identity is inseparable from a particular kind of technical conviction. The Elite Perpetual calendar draws on the same conviction. an automatic perpetual calendar of refined thinness, housed in a classically proportioned case and presenting its complication information on a dial balance between information richness and visual calm. This is a perpetual calendar from a manufacturer that knows the cost of losing what matters. The Zenith Elite Perpetual Calendar retails from approximately $12,000 to $18,000 USD. Number 7. Vacheron Constantin Traditionnel Perpetual Calendar. The manufacturer that has been answering the perpetual calendar question longer than any other house on this list. Vacheron Constantin, founded in Geneva in 1755 and in continuous, uninterrupted production through every era of watchmaking history that has followed. The weight of 270 years without a single year of interrupted production is not merely a biographical fact, but an argument. A manufacturer that has survived 2 world wars, the quartz crisis, multiple economic collapses, and every technological disruption the intervening centuries have produced, while maintaining the craft standards that made it worth preserving, has earned the authority to place a perpetual calendar on the market. The Traditionnel collection is where that authority is most directly and most honestly expressed. Classical Geneva case architecture, a dial composed with the confidence of long institutional memory, and a perpetual calendar caliber developed within a movement tradition that has been building complications of this order since the 18th century, all assembled by hand in Geneva's Carouge district to the finishing standards of a manufacturer that defines those standards for the industry rather than following them. The Vacheron Constantin Traditionnel Perpetual Calendar retails from approximately $65,000 to $100,000 USD. Number 6. IWC Portugieser Perpetual Calendar. The IWC Portugieser Perpetual Calendar is the large-format perpetual calendar reference, the watch that established the 44 mm case as the appropriate canvas for a complication of this information density, and in doing so, influenced how every subsequent large perpetual calendar has been conceived, proportioned, and presented. IWC's Schaffhausen manufacture has always approached watchmaking from the perspective of the engineer rather than the jeweler, a character shaped by its American founding, its location outside the traditional Swiss watchmaking valleys, and a consistent preference for mechanical solutions of practical elegance over decorative ones. The Portugieser perpetual calendar mechanism integrates a 7-day power reserve display alongside the perpetual calendar functions, giving the wearer visibility of the energy state of the movement and therefore the ability to manage the one vulnerability every mechanical perpetual calendar shares: the need for reset if power is exhausted. The 44th minute dial manages day, date, month, leap year, moon phase, and power reserve through a layout of such confident spaciousness that each element is immediately and effortlessly readable, a design achievement that the Portugieser's scale enables and IWC's engineering culture demands. The IWC Portugieser Perpetual Calendar retails from approximately $22,000 to $30,000 USD. Number 5. Jaeger-LeCoultre Master Perpetual. The Jaeger-LeCoultre Master Perpetual is the perpetual calendar from the manufacturer that the entire Swiss industry quietly and universally acknowledges as the greatest technical resource in the valley. A house that has supplied movements, escapements, and complications to Patek Philippe, to Vacheron Constantin, to Audemars Piguet, and to virtually every name of consequence in Geneva for over 180 years of continuous operation. Jaeger-LeCoultre's Le Sentier manufacture holds the record for the most calibers developed by any single watchmaker in history. Over 400 distinct caliber references, and the depth of complications expertise that record implies is expressed in the Master Perpetual with a naturalness that distinguishes the work of genuine mastery from the work of careful achievement. The Master Collection is JLC's definitive dress watch statement, a case of classical proportion, a dial of refined information architecture, and complications executed with the institutional fluency of a manufacturer for whom perpetual calendars are not exceptional projects, but routine expressions of capability. The moon phase indication in the Master Perpetual achieves an accuracy requiring correction only every 3,000 years, not because JLC needs to make that claim, but because the gear ratio calculating that cycle was simply done correctly. The Jaeger-LeCoultre Master Perpetual retails from approximately $25,000 to $40,000 USD. Number 4. Audemars Piguet Royal Oak Perpetual Calendar. The Audemars Piguet Royal Oak Perpetual Calendar is the watch that continues to confound expectations every time it is encountered fresh, because the expectations it defies are so deeply held by people who should know better. The expectation is that a sports watch case and a perpetual calendar complication constitute an inherent tension, a compromise in which one must concede something to the other. The Royal Oak Perpetual Calendar demonstrates, with the persuasiveness of 40 years of continuous production and the authority of one of the greatest case designs in watchmaking history, that this expectation is wrong. Gerald Genta's 1972 octagonal bezel, its 8 exposed screws, its Grande Tapisserie dial, and its integrated bracelet frame the perpetual calendar complication not as an addition but as an arrival, as though the complication was always the Royal Oak's destination, and the standard watch was simply the preparation for it. The in-house Caliber 5V134, one of the thinnest self-winding perpetual calendar movements ever produced, makes the case profile possible and the wearing experience remarkable. A watch of this complication depth and this mechanical sophistication that sits on the wrist with the ease and confidence of a sports watch, because it is one. The Audemars Piguet Royal Oak Perpetual Calendar retails from approximately $80,100 to $30,000 USD. Number 3. A. Lange & Söhne Langematic. Perpetual, the manufacturer that has produced, in 35 years of operation following its 1990 reestablishment, the most discussed and most consistently admired movement finishing in the world. A. Lange & Söhne of Glashütte, Saxony. The Langematic Perpetual is the reference that most completely expresses Lange's particular genius. Not merely the quality of what they build, but the originality of how they think about what they build. Every other mechanical perpetual calendar on this list shares a common characteristic. When the watch stops, when power is exhausted, or the watch is simply left unworn, and the owner wishes to set the calendar displays correctly before wearing again, each calendar indication must be set individually and sequentially, function by function, until the entire calendar is synchronized. The Langematic Perpetual eliminates this inconvenience entirely through a mechanism of Lange's own engineering, a synchronized quick-set system that allows all calendar displays to be corrected simultaneously using the crown alone, in a single operation, in any direction, to any calendar state. This is the kind of solution that distinguishes engineering intelligence from engineering competence. Not merely executing a known solution to a high standard, but reconceiving the problem entirely and solving it in a way that no previous manufacturer had managed. Combined with the outsized gross datum display, Lange's signature date indication presenting tens and units in adjacent apertures of a size that renders the date legible across a room, and the 3/4 German silver plate with its hand-engraved balance cock, blued screws, and hand-beveled bridges, the Langematic Perpetual is the perpetual calendar as Lange conceives the wristwatch. As a mechanical argument that refusing compromise and refusing convention produces results that convention and compromise are incapable of imagining. The A. Lange & Söhne Langematic Perpetual retails from approximately $80,000 to $120,000 USD. Number 2. Patek Philippe Perpetual Calendar 5320G. The watchmaker that has produced more perpetual calendar movements than any other manufacturer in the history of Swiss watchmaking. Patek Philippe, in the reference that most completely represents the perpetual calendar as Geneva's greatest house understands the complication, the 5320G in white gold. Patek Philippe's relationship with the perpetual calendar stretches back to 1925, when the Geneva manufacturer completed a pocket watch perpetual calendar that established the caliber of engineering commitment the house would maintain across the following century. The 5320G is the contemporary expression of that commitment. Not the most complex perpetual calendar in the Patek catalog, which extends to minute repeater perpetuals and grand complications of extraordinary density, but the most resolved, the perpetual calendar as a sufficient and complete statement, requiring nothing additional to justify the space it occupies on the wrist or the price it commands in the market. The retrograde date display, the date hand sweeping forward through the month and snapping back instantaneously at month's end rather than advancing conventionally through an aperture, is a complication within the complication, adding a kinetic drama to the calendar function that rewards the patient observer at the appropriate moment each month. The Calibre 324 SQALU 24H powering the 5320G is decorated and regulated to standards that the Patek Philippe seal, the manufacturer's own quality certification, more demanding than Kioski, requires of every movement leaving the Rue du Rhône atelier. The secondary market for the 5320GG consistently values the reference above its already significant retail price, reflecting a collecting community's collective judgment that this is a watch worth more than it costs to acquire. The Patek Philippe Perpetual Calendar 5320G retails from approximately $80,000 $110,000 USD, with secondary market values frequently and meaningfully exceeding that figure. Number 1. Breguet Classique Perpetual Calendar 5327. At the absolute pinnacle of this list, and by an argument grounded in history, in invention, and in the irreducible authority of the man whose name the watch carries, sits the Breguet Classique Perpetual Calendar 5327. To understand why no other perpetual calendar watch can occupy this position, you must understand who Abraham Louis Breguet was and what he did. Born in Neuchâtel in 1747 and working in Paris through the Revolutionary era and into the Napoleonic period, Breguet was the greatest watchmaker who has ever lived, a figure whose inventions include the tourbillon, the parachute shock protection system, the overcoil hairspring, the self-winding watch, the first wristwatch ever made, and the perpetual calendar itself. Every mechanical perpetual calendar on this list, every perpetual calendar in every manufacturer's catalog at any price from any country, descends from the mechanical principles that Abraham Louis Breguet developed, patented, and refined in Paris in the closing decades of the 18th century. When Breguet, the manufacturer that carries his name and his legacy, produces a perpetual calendar watch, it is not participating in a tradition. It is the tradition, wearing itself. The Classique 5327 houses Caliber 7827, a self-winding manufacture movement whose architectural decisions, the disposition of the perpetual calendar cam system, the integration of the retrograde secular perpetual calendar mechanism in certain configurations, the finishing of each component to Breguet's exacting atelier standards, reflect an unbroken institutional connection to the inventor of the complication itself. The dial is executed in the Breguet house language, engine-turned guilloche decoration applied by hand on the rose engine, Breguet numerals developed by the founder himself in the 18th century as the most legible numeral form available to the watchmaker, blued Breguet hands whose characteristic open-tipped form is one of the most copied and least successfully imitated details in all of watchmaking, and a case in yellow or white gold whose form, the coin-edged case flank, the symmetrical lugs, the overall proportion has been refined through 250 years of continuous production into an archetype rather than a design. The moon phase indication in the 5327 achieves secular calendar accuracy, accounting for the precise length of the lunar month to a degree that requires correction by 1 day only every 122 years. Every detail of this watch exists because Breguet's founder established the principles it follows, and because the craftspeople who build it today have inherited the deepest and most direct obligation in all of watchmaking to honor those principles correctly.